What would you do if you discovered your husband's affair was just the beginning of a nightmare you never saw coming? Rebecca Harrison thought she was dealing with a typical cheating spouse when she saw her husband kissing another woman in their driveway. 7 months pregnant and heartbroken, she called the one person she trusted most, her Navy SEAL twin brother Jake. But what they uncovered wasn't just adultery. It was something far more sinister. The mysterious text messages, the forged life insurance policy worth $2 million, the surveillance photos of Rebecca's daily routine taken by someone who'd been watching her for months. And then came the phone call that changed everything. A woman's voice offering $50,000 cash for a very specific job. To kill Rebecca Harrison and make it look like suicide. There was just one problem with this murder-for-hire plot. The person Vanessa Collins hired to eliminate her romantic rival, he wasn't just any hitman. He was Rebecca's twin brother, a trained Navy SEAL who would do anything to protect his family. What happened next exposed a nationwide network of killers, saved dozens of lives, and proved that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead to the greatest triumph. This is the true story of how a pregnant woman's discovery of her husband's affair unraveled one of the most sophisticated murder-for-hire operations in FBI history. You won't believe how this ends. The water glass shattered against the hardwood floor, sending crystal fragments across the nursery she had spent months perfecting. Rebecca Harrison pressed her 7 months pregnant belly against the window frame, watching her husband of 5 years kiss another woman in their own driveway. No! No! This isn't happening! The baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if sensing her distress, or maybe it was her racing heartbeat that startled the child. Either way, the life inside her seemed to know that everything had just changed forever. Marcus pulled away from the blonde woman, his hands lingering on her waist in a way that spoke of familiarity. This wasn't a first kiss. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was routine, comfortable, practiced. Becca's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Unlock, lock, unlock, lock, unlock. The compulsive checking for messages that might explain this away, might make sense of what she was seeing, but there were no texts from Marcus saying he was coming home early. No missed calls explaining why a strange woman was in their driveway. The woman was young, maybe 25 or 26. Blonde hair perfectly styled even at 7 in the evening. Tight dress that showed off a figure unburdened by pregnancy or the weight of years. She laughed at something Marcus said, throwing her head back in a gesture so theatrical it had to be genuine joy. When was the last time Becca had laughed like that? Marcus opened the car door for the woman with the same gentlemanly gesture he used to reserve for Becca. Before the pregnancy made getting in and out of cars an awkward production. Before she started wearing his old college t-shirts because they were the only things that fit comfortably over her expanding belly. The woman kissed him again before getting into her silver BMW, a car Becca had never seen before, which meant this relationship had its own geography, its own places and routines that existed parallel to their marriage. As the BMW pulled away, Marcus straightened his tie and checked his reflection in his phone screen. The same phone he claimed was always dying when she tried to reach him during his increasingly frequent late nights at the office. Becca stepped back from the window, her bare feet crunching on the broken glass. The nursery around her suddenly felt like a monument to her naivety. The crib they had assembled together last month, the rocking chair where she had imagined nursing their son, the mobile with little airplanes that played a lullaby, Marcus said reminded him of his childhood. All of it built on lies. Her phone buzzed in her shaking hands. For a wild moment, she hoped it was Marcus with some impossible explanation. Instead, it was an unknown number. Your husband won't be a problem much longer? The text message made no sense. Becca read it 3 times, her pregnant brain struggling to process the words. A wrong number. Surely. Some weird spam message that had nothing to do with what she had just witnessed. But the timing felt too coincidental to ignore. The front door opened downstairs and Marcus's voice carried up to the nursery with its usual cheerful emptiness. Beck, I'm home. Sorry I'm late. Had to show a property to some clients from out of town. Lies came so easily to him now. Smooth and practiced, delivered with the same smile she had fallen in love with 7 years ago. Back when that smile was genuine, before it became a tool for deception. Becca carefully stepped around the broken glass and walked to the nursery doorway. She could hear Marcus in the kitchen, probably opening a beer and sorting through the mail like it was any other evening, like he hadn't just been kissing another woman in their driveway 20 minutes ago. "I'll be right down," she called, surprised by how normal her voice sounded. "Just finishing up in the nursery." She grabbed her phone again and scrolled to Jake's number. Her twin brother answered on the first ring, 3 hours away at their mother's house in Pennsylvania. "Beck, what happened?" Even after 32 years, the twin connection remained eerily strong. Jake could read her mood through 2 words and 300 miles of distance. "I need you to come here," she said quietly, sweeping glass into a pile with her foot. "Tonight if you can. Are you hurt? Is the baby okay?" "We're fine. But Marcus?" She stopped, realizing she didn't know how to finish that sentence. Marcus what? Was cheating, was lying, had been living a double life for months while she prepared to have his child. "I'll be there in 3 hours," Jake said without waiting for details. "Do you need me to call Mom?" "Not yet. Just come." "Beck?" His voice carried the weight of shared DNA and 32 years of protecting each other. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out." She hung up just as another text arrived from the same unknown number. "He deserves what's coming." "You both do." This time, the message felt less like a wrong number and more like a threat. Becca screenshot both texts and forwarded them to Jake, then deleted them from her phone. Some instinct told her Marcus shouldn't see them, at least not yet. Downstairs, Marcus was humming while he cooked dinner, the same off-key rendition of an old Beatles song he always hummed when he was in a particularly good mood. The sound that used to make her smile now made her stomach turn. How long had this been going on? How many evenings had he come home humming after seeing her? How many times had Becca kissed those lips that had been on another woman just minutes before? The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if responding to her surge of anger. She pressed both hands to her belly and took deep breaths, trying to calm down for the sake of the child. Stress wasn't good for either of them, and she had a long night ahead of her. "Beck, you okay up there?" Marcus called. "Just had to clean up some broken glass. I'll be right down." She took one last look around the nursery. In a few hours, Jake would be here, and everything would change. Her twin brother had a way of cutting through pretense and getting to the truth of things. It came from his military training, maybe, or just from knowing her better than anyone else in the world. Either way, Marcus was about to have the worst night of his life, and somehow, despite everything, Becca was looking forward to it. Dinner was a masterclass in deception. Marcus served her favorite pasta dish, poured her a glass of sparkling water with just the right amount of lemon, and asked about her day with the same attentive concern he had shown for 5 years of marriage. "How was your doctor's appointment?" he asked, twirling linguine around his fork with practiced ease. Becca had to think for a moment. The appointment felt like weeks ago instead of hours, before her world had shattered in their driveway. "Everything's fine. Baby's measuring right on schedule. Doctor, Roberts says I might go into labor a little early, but that's normal for first pregnancies." "That's great, honey. I can't wait to meet him." The endearment felt like acid in her ears. How many other women was he calling honey these days? How many future mothers was he planning to abandon for younger, more convenient options? Marcus reached across the table and squeezed her hand. His wedding ring caught the light from the chandelier they had picked out together during their first year of marriage, back when she believed in forever until death do us part. "I've been thinking about names again," he continued. "What do you think about James?" "It was my grandfather's name." Becca nodded and made appropriate responses, all while studying her husband's face for signs of the man who had been kissing another woman 2 hours ago. But Marcus was a good actor. He had clearly had plenty of practice. "Marcus," she said carefully, "you've been working late a lot recently." "I know, and I'm sorry about that. But this market is so competitive right now. If I don't stay on top of every lead, someone else will steal my clients." More lies, delivered with perfect sincerity. She wondered if he had rehearsed this conversation in his car on the way home, the same way he probably rehearsed excuses for his girlfriend when he had to rush back to his pregnant wife. "Maybe after the baby comes, you could slow down a little. Spend more time at home?" Something flickered across Marcus's face, barely perceptible, but she caught it, the same expression he got when a real estate deal started going south. Of course," he said. "Once we get through this busy season, I'll definitely cut back on the evening appointments. Evening appointments. Is that what he called them? Becca's phone buzzed on the counter where she had left it charging. Marcus glanced over, and she fought the urge to grab it before he could see the screen. Probably just Jake, she said. He's driving down from Mom's tonight. Should be here around 10. Tonight, is everything okay? I just wanted to see him before the baby comes. You know how he gets about missing important family stuff. Marcus nodded, but she could see him calculating something behind his eyes. Jake had never liked Marcus, though her twin brother was too polite to say so directly. Something about Marcus's smile never reaching his eyes. Jake had mentioned once, military guys were good at reading people, and Jake had read Marcus as fundamentally untrustworthy from day one. Turned out Jake had been right. Well, it'll be good to see him, Marcus said, though his tone suggested the opposite. How long is he staying? I don't know yet. He's on leave for another 2 weeks. Marcus's fork paused halfway to his mouth. 2 weeks was a long time for Jake to be around, asking uncomfortable questions and noticing things Marcus probably preferred to keep hidden. After dinner, Marcus disappeared into his home office to catch up on some paperwork. Becca sat in the living room, ostensibly watching television but actually studying every family photo on the mantel. Their wedding day, various vacations. The picture from last Christmas where Marcus's smile looked forced and her pregnancy wasn't showing yet. In every recent photo, Marcus looked like he was somewhere else mentally, like he was going through the motions of being a husband while his real life happened elsewhere. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Jake. Just past the exit for Harrisburg. Be there in 90 minutes. You sure you're okay? She texted back quickly. Fine, can't talk right now. But she wasn't fine. Sitting in her living room, surrounded by the evidence of 5 years of marriage, she felt like an archaeologist discovering that everything she had believed about an ancient civilization was wrong. The artifacts were all there, but their meaning had fundamentally changed. The house felt different now, bigger and emptier, despite being filled with furniture they had chosen together. Even the baby's kicks felt less like excitement and more like warnings. Marcus emerged from his office around 9:30, yawning dramatically. I think I'm going to turn in early tonight, he announced. Big day tomorrow. More appointments, no doubt. More evenings when he would come home humming and smelling faintly of unfamiliar perfume that she had trained herself not to notice. I'll probably stay up and wait for Jake, she said. Marcus kissed the top of her head, the same affectionate gesture he had performed thousands of times before. But now it felt like a betrayal in itself, a pantomime of intimacy designed to maintain the illusion of their marriage. Don't stay up too late, he said. You need your rest. Such caring words from a man who was systematically destroying the foundation of her world. After Marcus went upstairs, Becca sat alone in the darkened living room and allowed herself to feel the full weight of what was happening. The man she had loved for 7 years, married for 5, and was about to have a child with was living a completely separate life. A life that apparently included not just another woman, but someone who sent threatening text messages about making husbands not a problem much longer. What did that even mean? The baby kicked again, and Becca found herself talking to her unborn son for the first time in weeks. I don't know what's going to happen, she whispered, hands pressed to her belly. But I promise you'll be safe. Whatever it takes, you'll be safe. Headlights swept across the front windows as Jake's truck pulled into the driveway. Becca had never been so grateful to see anyone in her entire life. Her twin brother was home. Jake took one look at his sister and knew. It was the same expression she had worn at age 8 when she had discovered their hamster dead in its cage, and at 16 when their father had his first heart attack. The particular combination of shock and grief that came with losing something you thought was permanent. Where is he? Jake asked, not bothering with pleasantries. Upstairs, asleep. Jake set his duffel bag by the door and surveyed the living room with the same systematic attention he brought to hostile territories overseas. Everything looked normal to an outsider, but something was wrong. He could feel it. Tell me everything. Becca walked him through the evening, from the broken water glass to the mysterious text messages. Jake listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. Show me the texts. She pulled up the screenshots and handed him the phone. Jake studied them for a long moment, then forwarded them to his own device. Have you gotten any others? No, just those 2. But Jake, there's more. She told him about the months of late nights, the unexplained absences, the gradual changes in Marcus's behavior that she had dismissed as work stress or pregnancy anxiety. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, she said. Pregnant women are supposed to be emotional and irrational, right? But I wasn't imagining it. Jake made tea the way their mother had taught them both, steep for exactly 3 minutes, one sugar cube, splash of milk. The familiar ritual was comforting in a way that words couldn't be. We're going to figure this out, he said, handing her the mug. But first, I need to see his computer. Jake, we can't just go through his stuff. Beck, her twin brother fixed her with the same look that had probably intimidated enemy combatants in Afghanistan. Someone is sending you threatening messages about your husband. Normal privacy rules don't apply anymore. Marcus's home office was a monument to organized deception. Real estate contracts filed perfectly, business cards arranged by industry, family photos positioned to suggest domestic happiness to visiting clients. But Jake approached it like a crime scene, methodically searching for evidence of the life Marcus was hiding. The computer was password protected, but Jake had learned a few things about digital security during his years with the SEALs. Within 20 minutes, he had access to Marcus's email, browser history, and financial records. What they found was worse than an affair. Look at this, Jake said, pointing to a series of wire transfers. He's been moving money to a separate account for 8 months. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic bank alerts, but it adds up to almost $50,000. $50,000 from where? His real estate company. He's been skimming commission payments. Becca studied the screen, trying to make sense of the numbers. Why would he steal from his own company? Jake clicked through more files. Credit card statements for an account Becca had never seen. Expensive dinners at restaurants they had never visited together. Hotel charges in cities where Marcus claimed to be showing properties but where no sales had been recorded. He's funding a relationship, Jake said grimly, and not a casual one. The browser history revealed frequent visits to jewelry websites, luxury travel sites, and apartment rental listings in the next town over. Marcus hadn't just been cheating, he had been building an entirely separate life with someone else's money. There's more, Jake said, clicking on a hidden folder labeled Insurance. Inside were documents for a life insurance policy on Becca. A policy worth $2 million that she had never signed for and never agreed to. I never applied for this, she said, studying the paperwork. This isn't my signature. Jake examined the documents more closely. The application is dated 3 months ago, right around the time these money transfers started. That's impossible. I would remember signing something like this. Unless you didn't sign it. The implications hung in the air between them. Insurance fraud, embezzlement, and now threatening text messages about Marcus no longer being a problem. Jake, Becca said slowly, what if those texts weren't about hurting Marcus? What if they were about getting him out of the way so someone could collect on this policy? Before Jake could answer, they heard footsteps upstairs. Marcus was moving around, probably getting a drink of water or using the bathroom. Both siblings froze, listening to the familiar sounds of the house settling back into silence. We need to copy all of this, Jake whispered, plugging in a flash drive. While the files transferred, he pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the insurance documents. Whatever was happening here was bigger than a simple extramarital affair. Someone was planning something, and Becca was the target. Jake, she said, pointing to the computer screen. Look at this. A folder labeled Photos contained dozens of pictures that Marcus hadn't taken. Images of their house from different angles. Shots of Becca's car in various parking lots. Photos of her daily routine that could only have been captured by someone following her. This is surveillance, Jake said, his military training kicking in. Professional level. Someone's been watching you for months. Who would do something like this? Someone who knows your schedule well enough to avoid being seen. Someone with access to your personal information. Someone Marcus trusts enough to share details about your life. The answer was obvious, but neither of them wanted to say it out loud. The blonde woman in the driveway wasn't just Marcus's girlfriend. She was part of something much more dangerous. Jake finished copying the files and carefully closed all the programs, leaving Marcus's computer exactly as they had found it. But now they had evidence of systematic planning that went far beyond adultery. Pack a bag, Jake said as they returned to the living room. You're not staying here tonight. I can't just leave. Marcus will know something's wrong. Beck, someone has been planning this for months, stealing money, forging insurance documents, conducting surveillance. Those text messages aren't random threats. They're part of a plan. But what kind of plan? Jake looked at his sister, 7 months pregnant and still trying to believe the best about the man who had betrayed her in every possible way. The kind that ends with you dead and someone else collecting $2 million. Marcus walked into his own ambush at 7:15 the next morning, coffee mug in hand and car keys jingling in his pocket. He stopped short when he saw Becca and Jake sitting at the kitchen table, every piece of evidence spread out like an accusation. What's all this? Marcus asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sit down, Becca said. Her voice was steady, cold in a way that made Jake proud of his twin sister. We need to talk. Marcus remained standing, scanning the documents on the table. Jake watched his face carefully, noting the micro-expressions that revealed recognition and calculation. I can explain, Marcus began. Good, Becca interrupted. Start with this. She held up the forged life insurance policy. When exactly did I sign this application? Marcus's face went pale. He set down his coffee mug with shaking hands and finally took a seat across from them. Becca, you have to understand. I understand that someone forged my signature on a $2 million life insurance policy, she said, unconsciously arranging her hands on her pregnant belly. I understand that you've been stealing money from your company for 8 months. I understand that someone has been following me and taking pictures of my daily routine. Marcus looked at Jake, clearly hoping for some kind of masculine solidarity, but found only professional judgment. She knows about Vanessa, Marcus said finally. Vanessa Collins, Jake said. It wasn't a question. They had found her name in Marcus's email folders. Your office manager? It started as just she was helping me with some difficult clients, and we started working late together, and things just happened. Things just happened, Becca repeated flatly. For 8 months, while I was pregnant with your child. I was going to end it, Marcus said desperately. I was going to tell her it was over after the baby was born. But she had other plans, Jake said, spreading out printed emails between Marcus and Vanessa. According to these messages, she's been pressuring you to leave Becca. She wants you to divorce your wife and marry her. Marcus nodded miserably. She said she loved me, said she couldn't stand being the other woman anymore. So you decided to take out a life insurance policy on your pregnant wife? Becca said. Without her knowledge or consent? That wasn't my idea. Marcus's voice cracked. Vanessa suggested it. She said it was just a safety net in case something happened during childbirth or in case something was arranged to happen. Jake finished. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus stared at them both, and Becca could see the moment when he realized how far things had gone. She wouldn't, Marcus whispered. Vanessa wouldn't hurt anyone. Becca's phone rang. Unknown number. She looked at Jake, who nodded, then answered on speaker. Rebecca Harrison. The voice was female, young, with a slight accent that might have been Southern. Yes, you should be more careful who you trust. Marcus went white. He recognized the voice. Vanessa, Becca asked, your husband has been very helpful, providing information about your schedule, your habits, your vulnerabilities. Did you know you're quite predictable doctor's appointments every Tuesday at 2, grocery shopping every Thursday morning, evening walks around the neighborhood when the weather's nice? Jake was already moving, checking windows and door locks with military efficiency. What do you want? Becca asked. What I deserve? A life with the man I love, without interference from a woman who never appreciated him. Then take him, Becca said. The marriage is over anyway. Vanessa's laugh was cold and calculating. It's not that simple anymore. Too many complications. Too many loose ends. The line went dead. Marcus was shaking. She's not well, he said. I think she's had some kind of breakdown. She's been saying crazy things lately, talking about us being together forever, about removing obstacles. Obstacles, Jake repeated. Like your pregnant wife. I never thought she was serious. I thought she was just upset about the affair becoming complicated. Marcus, Becca said, and her voice carried 32 years of disappointment in people who let her down. You helped her get a fraudulent life insurance policy. You gave her information about my daily routine. You enabled everything that's happening right now. I know, I know, and I'm sorry, but we can fix this. We can call the police, get a restraining order. Becca stood up, all 7 months of pregnancy lending gravity to her presence. There is no we anymore. You chose her over me and over your child. Now you get to live with the consequences. Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. Beck, we need to go. Now. What is it? Tank just sent me intel on Vanessa Collins. She's not who she claims to be. Marcus looked confused. What do you mean? I mean, your girlfriend is wanted in connection with 2 suspicious deaths in other states. Both involved married men with pregnant wives. Both wives died in accidents that resulted in large insurance payouts. The kitchen fell silent except for the steady tick of the clock over the sink. The same clock that had marked time for 5 years of Becca's marriage, now counting down to something much more dangerous. We're leaving, Jake said. Right now. Wait. Marcus stood up. Let me pack some things. Come with you. No, Becca said. You made your choice. Now live with it. As they gathered the evidence and prepared to leave, Marcus grabbed Becca's arm. I never wanted anyone to get hurt, he said. I love you. I love our baby. Becca looked at him for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time in months. If you love us, you'll cooperate with the police. You'll tell them everything you know about Vanessa and help them stop whatever she's planning. Of course, yes, whatever it takes. But as they walked toward the door, Jake's phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Vanessa's name. Jake answered. Hello. You must be the twin brother. Vanessa's voice was different now, harder. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening, Jake said, motioning for silence as he put the phone on speaker. I have a job for you. Vanessa's voice carried the confident tone of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted. $50,000 cash. Are you interested? Jake met Becca's eyes across the kitchen table. Marcus had gone pale, finally understanding that his girlfriend was something far more dangerous than a lovesick office manager. What kind of job? Jake asked carefully. The kind that requires your particular skill set, former military, combat experience, no local connections that would make you a suspect. You've done your research. I always do my research, Jake. May I call you Jake? Depends on what you're paying for. Vanessa's laugh was cold and calculating. Rebecca Harrison, 7 months pregnant, lives at 1524 Maple Street in a house with a broken security camera and a husband who works late most evenings. Becca's hands instinctively moved to protect her belly as she listened to her own death being commissioned. I need it to look like an accident, Vanessa continued. The pregnant wife of a cheating husband, overcome with despair, makes a tragic decision. Very believable. Don't you think? 50,000 is a lot of money, Jake said, playing for time while gesturing for Becca to start recording the conversation. Consider it a bonus for discretion and efficiency, half up front, half when the job is done. When do you want this to happen? Tonight would be ideal. Marcus is working late again, meeting with clients. He'll have a solid alibi, and the house will be empty except for the target. Marcus was shaking his head frantically, mouthing, I never told her that to anyone who would listen. Where do we meet? Jake asked. The diner on Route 37, just outside town. Do you know it? I'll find it. Booth in the back corner. 9 o'clock tonight. Come alone and then Jake don't disappoint me. I've heard good things about your work in Afghanistan. The line went dead. Becca stared at her twin brother. She just hired you to kill me. And she doesn't know who I am, Jake said grimly. Which means we have an advantage. Marcus was hyperventilating. This is insane. Vanessa isn't a killer. She's just confused and upset about the affair. Marcus, Becca said with infinite patience, your confused and upset girlfriend just commissioned a murder for hire. She's been planning this for months, stealing money, forging documents, conducting surveillance. This isn't a crime of passion. This is premeditated murder for financial gain. Jake was already calling Detective Sarah Mitchell, his contact from the military liaison office. Within 30 minutes, the kitchen was full of police officers, federal agents, and enough recording equipment to document whatever Vanessa said at their meeting. This is a federal case now, Detective Mitchell explained. Conspiracy to commit murder across state lines, insurance fraud, potentially multiple homicides if our suspicions about her previous victims are correct. Previous victims? Becca asked. We've been tracking a pattern, 3 suspicious deaths in 3 different states, all involving pregnant women married to men who had recently taken out large life insurance policies. The husbands all had airtight alibis, but they also all had girlfriends who disappeared shortly after the insurance payments were made. And you think Vanessa Collins is responsible? We think Vanessa Collins doesn't exist. The name is an alias. We're still working on her real identity, but the pattern is consistent. She targets married men with money, seduces them, manipulates them into setting up the insurance fraud, then eliminates the wives and disappears with the payouts. Marcus was sitting in the corner, head in his hands. I helped her do this. I gave her all the information she needed. Yes, you did, Detective Mitchell said bluntly, which means you're going to help us stop her. The plan was simple. Jake would meet Vanessa as arranged, wearing a wire and with backup position throughout the diner. They would record her instructions, document the money exchange, and arrest her for conspiracy to commit murder. What if she recognizes me from the photos, Jake asked, studying the surveillance pictures they had found on Marcus's computer. She's only seen you from a distance, Detective Mitchell said, and she's expecting a hired killer, not a protective brother. People see what they expect to see. And if something goes wrong, then we move in immediately. We're not risking your life or your sister's for this operation. As evening approached, Becca found herself alone with Marcus for the first time since the confrontation. He sat across from her at the kitchen table, looking like a man who had finally understood the full consequences of his choices. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never wanted anyone to get hurt. But someone did get hurt, Becca replied. 3 women are dead because of whatever Vanessa is doing, and I would have been the 4th. How do I live with that? Becca studied her husband's face, seeing clearly for the first time in months. He looked older, more fragile, like a man who had discovered that actions have consequences beyond his imagination. You live with it by making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else, she said. You cooperate completely with the investigation. You testify if they need you to testify. You take responsibility for your part in this. And then we figure out how to raise a child together without being married, because this marriage is over. Marcus, even if Vanessa disappears tomorrow and none of this ever happened, we're done. Marcus nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. At 8:30, Jake prepared to leave for his meeting with a woman who wanted to hire him to kill his own sister. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. If this goes wrong, Jake said to Becca, Tank has orders to get you somewhere safe. It won't go wrong, she said with more confidence than she felt. You're the best at what you do. Yeah, well, usually what I do involves protecting people, not pretending to murder them. As Jake headed for the door, his phone buzzed with another text from Vanessa. Can you do it tonight? I'll pay double if you can make it happen tonight. Jake showed the message to Detective Mitchell, who nodded grimly. She's escalating. Probably suspects that Marcus might grow a conscience and confess, which means we need to end this now. Jake texted back, double payment requires meeting in person to discuss details. See you at 9. On my way to collect your sister's life, Jake said to Becca as he headed out the door. This might be the strangest mission briefing I've ever received. Just remember, Becca called after him, you're not just protecting me anymore. You're protecting your nephew too. Trust me, Jake said. I won't forget. As his truck disappeared into the darkness, Becca pressed both hands to her belly and spoke to her unborn son. Your Uncle Jake is going to make sure we're safe, she whispered, and when you're old enough to understand, I'll tell you how he saved our lives before you were even born. The baby kicked once, hard, as if in agreement. The roadside diner on Route 37 was exactly what Jake had expected: fluorescent lighting, cracked vinyl booths, and the kind of coffee that could strip paint. The perfect place for conducting illegal business, because nobody stayed longer than necessary and everyone minded their own concerns. Vanessa Collins sat in the back corner booth, exactly as promised. She was younger than Jake had expected, maybe 26 or 27, with a kind of polished attractiveness that came from careful maintenance rather than natural beauty. Blonde hair, expensive clothes, manicured nails that had never seen manual labor. She looked like someone who had never been told no in her entire life. "Jake Sullivan," she said as he slid into the booth across from her. "You look exactly like your sister. Twins tend to do that. It must be strange, being hired to kill someone who shares your DNA." Jake kept his expression neutral, though everything about this woman set off his tactical instincts. She spoke about murder the way most people discuss the weather, with casual indifference that suggested either complete sociopathy or extensive practice. 50,000 is 50,000, he said. "Family drama doesn't affect my rate." Vanessa smiled, clearly pleased with his professionalism. "I knew you were the right choice. Marcus mentioned how practical you military types can be." Marcus knows about this. Marcus knows what he needs to know, that his pregnant wife is going to have an unfortunate accident, and that he'll be very well compensated for his grief. She reached into her purse and withdrew a manila envelope thick with cash. 25,000 as discussed. The rest when you provide proof of completion?" Jake took the envelope without counting it, playing the role of a man accustomed to such transactions. "What kind of proof do you need of photos?" "Something that clearly shows she's dead, but nothing that would implicate you or Marcus in the investigation. And the timeline tonight would be perfect. Marcus is scheduled to work late, showing properties to out-of-town clients. He'll have multiple witnesses confirming his whereabouts when his wife's body's discovered." Jake nodded slowly, processing the casual way she planned around another human being's death. "You've thought this through." "I always think things through. It's why I'm successful." "Successful at what?" "Exactly." Vanessa's smile turned predatory. "At getting what I want. And what I want is a life with Marcus, unencumbered by previous obligations." Previous obligations. That's one way to describe a pregnant wife. "Rebecca Harrison is an obstacle to my happiness. Obstacles exist to be removed." Jake leaned back in the booth, studying this woman who spoke about his sister like a problem to be solved. "How many obstacles have you removed before?" "Enough to know what I'm doing. This isn't my first complicated relationship." "Jake?" The admission was exactly what Detective Mitchell needed. Through the wire he was wearing, every word was being recorded for future prosecution. But Jake needed more details about her methods and previous victims. "What's your preferred approach," he asked, "for removing obstacles?" "Whatever looks most natural. Car accidents are always good, but pregnancy complications are even better. So tragic, so believable. A young woman, overwhelmed by her husband's betrayal, makes a desperate decision in a moment of despair." "Suicide." "Suicide," Vanessa confirmed, with just enough physical evidence to suggest she might have intended to harm the baby too. "A desperate woman, you understand, not thinking clearly." Jake fought the urge to reach across the table and end this conversation with violence. Instead, he maintained his professional facade while mentally cataloging everything he would tell Detective Mitchell. "The house is secure?" he asked. "Completely. The security camera has been broken for weeks, and the neighbors are far enough away that screaming won't be an issue. Marcus made sure of that when they bought the place." "Sounds like Marcus has been very helpful." "Marcus wants to be with me," Vanessa said with absolute confidence. "He's just too weak to take the necessary steps himself. That's why he needs someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who understands that obstacles require permanent solutions." Jake's phone buzzed with a text message from Detective Mitchell. "We have enough. Move to extraction." But Vanessa was still talking, revealing details that could help identify her previous victims. "The last time I had to deal with a similar situation," she said, "the woman actually fought back. Can you imagine 8 months pregnant and she still tried to run? Very inconvenient." "What happened?" "Car accident, single vehicle, late at night, on a winding mountain road. Very tragic. The husband was devastated, of course, but he recovered quickly once the insurance money came through." "And where is he now?" "Enjoying his new life with his new wife." "Me?" Vanessa's smile was pure satisfaction. "For about 6 months, until I found someone more interesting." "What happened to him?" "Another accident. Amazing how many accidents happen to people around me." Jake's blood ran cold. This wasn't just about Rebecca and Marcus. Vanessa Collins was a serial killer who specialized in insurance fraud and relationship manipulation. "How many times have you done this?" he asked. "Lost count," Vanessa said casually. "But I'm very good at it. The key is choosing the right men. Weak, greedy, susceptible to flattery. Men who will do anything for a beautiful woman who makes them feel important. Like Marcus. Exactly like Marcus. Although he's been more resistant than most to the final stage of the plan. Final stage. Eliminating the husband once the insurance money is secured. Can't have loose ends, you know. Too many people who might develop guilty consciences and confess to the authorities." Jake realized that Marcus was also a target. Vanessa's plan wasn't just to kill Rebecca. It was to kill both of them and disappear with the money. So after tonight, Marcus becomes another accident. Eventually, I'll give him a few months to grieve his wife and bond with his grief counselor. Then another tragic accident, leaving me as the sole beneficiary of his estate. Very thorough. I've learned that planning prevents problems. The more details you control, the less likely things are to go wrong. Jake's phone buzzed again. This time the message was urgent. "Vanessa's phone is pinging location services. She knows she's being recorded. Get out now." But it was too late. Vanessa was looking at him with a completely different expression. Cold calculation replacing friendly conspiracy. "You know what's interesting, Jake," she said softly. "When I researched you, I found some fascinating information about your military service. Multiple tours in Afghanistan, decorated combat veteran, close-knit family with particular loyalty to your twin sister." Jake's hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon. "I also found it interesting that you're currently on leave, staying at your mother's house just 3 hours away from your sister's current crisis. Very convenient timing for a hired killer to be so close to the target. Coincidences happen. Yes, they do. But I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in research, preparation, and eliminating threats before they become problems." Vanessa's hand was already in her purse, and Jake realized she wasn't reaching for more money. "Which is why," she continued, "I hired backup." The diner's front door opened, and 2 men entered. They didn't look like customers. "Insurance, you understand?" Vanessa said. "Can't be too careful when conducting business with family members of the target." Jake assessed his tactical situation, 2 armed men blocking the exit, Vanessa with unknown weapons in easy reach, and a dining room full of innocent civilians who could become collateral damage. His radio earpiece crackled to life. "Alpha team moving to intercept. Maintain position." "I think our business is concluded," Jake said, standing slowly. "Oh, but we're just getting started," Vanessa replied. "You see, I never intended to hire you to kill your sister. I intended to hire you to die with her. Why? Because Rebecca Harrison isn't my only problem anymore. Her Navy SEAL twin brother is an unacceptable risk to my operations. 2 birds, 1 stone. Double the insurance money when Marcus suffers a complete nervous breakdown and also needs to be eliminated." Jake's earpiece crackled again. "Bravo, team in position. Green light on your signal." "Vanessa," Jake said calmly, "you made one critical error in your research." "What's that?" "You assumed I came here alone." The diner's windows exploded inward as Detective Mitchell's tactical team breached the building from 3 directions simultaneously. Vanessa's hired men went down under professional takedown techniques before they could draw their weapons. Vanessa herself lunged across the table with a knife that had appeared from nowhere. But Jake was ready for her. Years of combat training kicked in as he disarmed her and pinned her to the booth until backup could secure her with restraints. "Vanessa Collins," Detective Mitchell announced, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and about 6 other federal charges that will keep you busy for the rest of your life." As they loaded her into the back of a federal vehicle, Vanessa looked directly at Jake through the window. "This isn't over," she said. "There are others like me, more than you know." "Maybe," Jake replied, "but you won't be one of them anymore." Driving back to Rebecca's house, Jake called his sister to let her know the immediate threat was over. "Is she in custody?" Rebecca asked. "Federal custody. She's not going anywhere." "And Marcus?" "Also in custody, but he'll probably get a plea deal in exchange for testimony about her other victims." "How many others were there?" Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about Vanessa's casual admission of multiple murders. More than we know, he said finally. But the FBI is reopening several suspicious death cases based on what she told me tonight. Jake, Rebecca said softly, she was going to kill you too, wasn't she? Probably, but she made one critical mistake. What's that? She underestimated the Sullivan family. As Jake pulled into his sister's driveway, he could see her silhouette in the window, one hand pressed to her pregnant belly, waiting for him to come home safe. Tomorrow, they would deal with police statements and federal investigations and the complex process of putting their lives back together. But tonight, they were both alive, and that was enough. The federal courthouse in downtown Pittsburgh buzzed with controlled chaos as agents processed evidence and witnesses related to what the media had dubbed the insurance widow case. Detective Sarah Mitchell coordinated between local police, FBI investigators, and military liaison officers, while Jake provided detailed testimony about his recorded conversation with Vanessa Collins. The critical evidence, Special Agent Rebecca Torres explained to the assembled task force, is the recording of Collins admitting to multiple previous murders and her detailed plan for eliminating both Rebecca Harrison and her husband Marcus. How many previous cases are we looking at? Asked Agent David Chen from the Financial Crimes Division. At least 6 suspicious deaths across 4 states, dating back 3 years, all involving married men with substantial assets, pregnant wives, and large life insurance policies. All the wives died in apparent accidents or suicides. All the husbands died within 6 months of collecting the insurance money. Jake sat in the corner of the conference room, still processing what he had learned about Vanessa's operation. This wasn't just a woman scorned or a gold digger with violent tendencies. This was a systematic predator who had turned murder into a business model. What about the men she targeted? Detective Mitchell asked. Any pattern there? Successful professionals in their 30s and 40s, Agent Torres replied. Real estate developers, insurance executives, investment advisors, men with enough wealth to make the fraud worthwhile, but not so much that their deaths would trigger intensive investigations. And they all cooperated with setting up the insurance policies. According to financial records, yes, Collins was very good at manipulating them into believing they were protecting their families while actually setting them up for murder. Jake's phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. How much longer? Baby's been kicking all morning, and I think the stress is getting to him. He showed the message to Detective Mitchell, who nodded understandingly. We've got enough testimony for now, she said. Go check on your sister. We'll need more detailed statements later, but the immediate threat is over. As Jake prepared to leave, Agent Torres pulled him aside. There's something else, she said quietly. Collins has been asking to speak with you specifically. Why? Claims she has information about other operations, other people involved in similar schemes. Says she'll only talk to the man who caught her. It's a manipulation tactic, Jake said immediately. She's trying to maintain some kind of control over the situation. Probably, but if there are other victims, other operations we don't know about. Jake considered this. The idea of sitting across from Vanessa Collins again made his skin crawl. But if it could prevent other families from going through what Rebecca had experienced, it might be worth it. Set it up, he said, but I want full recording and at least 3 agents in the room. Done. An hour later, Jake sat in a sterile federal holding facility interview room, watching Vanessa Collins through reinforced glass. She looked different in orange jail clothing and without her carefully applied makeup. Smaller, more ordinary, though her eyes still held the calculating intelligence that made her so dangerous. Hello, Jake, she said when the guards brought her in. Thank you for coming. I'm here because you claim to have information about other victims. Talk. Vanessa smiled, clearly pleased that she still had something he wanted. Direct as always. I appreciate that in a man. She settled into her chair with the casual confidence of someone conducting a business meeting. What would you like to know? How many others are there? People like you. Operations like yours. More than you might think. Less than you might fear. Vanessa examined her fingernails with studied indifference. The insurance fraud business is quite competitive these days. Business? Of course it's a business. Do you think I stumbled into murder by accident? This requires planning, research, networking. You don't just wake up one day and decide to start killing people for money. Agent Torres leaned forward. Tell us about the networking. There's a whole community of people who specialize in different aspects of the operation. Document forgers, surveillance specialists, people who can make accidents look convincing. It's not that different from any other criminal enterprise. Names, Jake said. We need names. Of course you do, and I have them. But information like that has value. You're facing multiple federal murder charges, Agent Torres pointed out. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison regardless of what deal you make. Perhaps, but there are different kinds of life sentences. Minimum security versus maximum security. Solitary confinement versus general population. These details matter when you're planning for a very long future. Jake studied her across the table. Even facing the consequences of her crimes, Vanessa Collins was still trying to negotiate, still trying to control the situation to her advantage. How many people have you killed? He asked directly. Personally or total operations I've coordinated? Both. Vanessa was quiet for a long moment, apparently calculating whether honesty would serve her interests. Personally, 11 people across 3 years. Total operations, including ones where I provided coordination, but others handled the actual elimination. Probably 30 or 35. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 35 murders. 35 families destroyed. 35 lives ended for financial gain. Who else is involved? Agent Torres asked. Well, there's Michael Davidson in Tampa. He specializes in staging car accidents that look like suicide. Very artistic, actually. And Patricia Wong in Seattle. She's excellent at medical situations. Makes deaths look like complications from existing conditions. Jake wrote down the names while fighting the urge to reach across the table and physically express his opinion of Vanessa's casualness about mass murder. And then there's the coordinator, Vanessa continued. The person who matches operators with suitable targets, handles the financial arrangements, manages the overall logistics. Name, Jake said. That information is worth more than better prison conditions. That information is worth a transfer to witness protection and a new identity. Agent Torres and Jake exchanged glances. The coordinator represented the center of a murder-for-hire network that had been operating undetected for years. We'll consider it, Agent Torres said carefully. But we need more details about how the operation works. Simple. Really. The coordinator identifies potential targets through various sources. Wealthy men with unfaithful tendencies. Women who could be made to look like suicide risks. Situations where large insurance payouts wouldn't trigger immediate suspicion. How do you identify the targets? Social media, professional networks, divorce attorneys, marriage counselors. People share remarkable amounts of personal information when they think they're talking to sympathetic strangers. Vanessa's phone call to hire Jake had been recorded, but now Jake realized it was just the tip of an iceberg that extended much deeper than anyone had imagined. How long has this been going on? He asked. This particular network, about 5 years. But the concept isn't new. Insurance fraud combined with relationship manipulation has been around as long as insurance companies have been writing policies. And you think giving us this coordinator will buy you a better deal? I think giving you this coordinator will prevent a lot of future murders, which, coincidentally, might also result in better conditions for a cooperative witness. Agent Torres stood up. We'll discuss your proposal with federal prosecutors and get back to you. Don't take too long, Vanessa said. The coordinator doesn't like loose ends. If they think I might become a problem, I might have an accident right here in federal custody. As they prepared to leave, Vanessa called out to Jake. Your sister is very lucky, she said. Not just because you saved her life, but because she married someone weak instead of someone truly dangerous. Some of the men in our network are much more hands-on in their approach. Meaning Marcus Harrison was a useful idiot who got in over his head. But some of our clients enjoy participating directly in the elimination process. Family annihilators who want to watch their wives die. Men who see murder as the ultimate expression of control. Jake felt sick thinking about the implications. How many of those are there? Enough to keep you busy for a very long time. Agent Sullivan. I'm not an agent. No, but you will be. Men like you, who've seen what we do and understand what we're capable of, don't just walk away. You'll be hunting people like us for the rest of your life. As Jake left the federal facility, he realized Vanessa Collins was probably right. The knowledge of what was out there, The understanding of how many predators were systematically destroying families for profit would never let him return to normal civilian life. His phone rang as he reached his truck. Rebecca's number. "How did it go?" she asked. "Complicated. I'll tell you about it when I get home." "Jake, there's something else. Marcus wants to see you." "Why?" "He says he remembered something about Vanessa's background, something that might help with the investigation." Jake started his truck and pulled into traffic, heading back toward a sister who was 7 months pregnant and a brother-in-law who had nearly gotten them both killed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, and he said, "And Jake, thank you for everything. It's not over yet, Beck, but we're going to make sure it ends right." As he drove through downtown Pittsburgh, Jake thought about Vanessa's prediction that he would spend his life hunting people like her. Given what he had learned about the scope of their operations, it seemed like a worthwhile way to spend a career. Some families needed protecting, and Jake Sullivan was very good at protection. Marcus Harrison looked like a man who had aged 10 years in 3 days. He sat hunched over Rebecca's kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, staring at documents that represented the wreckage of his marriage and nearly his life. "Tell me what you remembered," Jake said, taking a seat across from his former brother-in-law. "It was something Vanessa said about her previous jobs," Marcus began, his voice barely above a whisper. "She mentioned working in Atlanta before she came here, but when I looked it up later, there's no record of her ever living in Georgia." "What kind of record did you look up? Employment history, apartment leases, utility bills?" "I was trying to plan a surprise birthday trip for her. Wanted to take her back to places that had meaning, but none of the addresses she gave me existed." Rebecca leaned forward from her position on the living room couch, one hand unconsciously protecting her belly. "You never mentioned that before." "I thought she was just being private about her past. Some people don't like to talk about their history, especially women who've been hurt before." Jake exchanged glances with Detective Mitchell, who had arrived an hour earlier to take additional statements. "What else did she tell you about Atlanta?" Detective Mitchell asked. "She said she had worked for a real estate company there, similar to mine. Said her previous boyfriend was also in real estate, but that he had died in a car accident. She seemed really broken up about it." "Did she give you a name?" "David something. David Chen. I think." Detective Mitchell made a note. "We'll check missing persons and accident reports in the Atlanta area. If this David Chen existed and died under suspicious circumstances, it fits the pattern," Jake finished. "Vanessa's been doing this for longer than we thought." Marcus looked up from his coffee. "There's something else. About the money." "What about it?" "The $50,000 I transferred to that separate account. Vanessa said it was for us to start fresh somewhere new, away from my obligations here. But she insisted I transfer it to an account number she provided, not one we opened together." "Do you still have that account number?" Marcus pulled out his phone and scrolled through his banking app. "Here. But when I tried to check the balance last week, the account had been closed. All the money transferred somewhere else." Detective Mitchell studied the account information. "This isn't a standard personal banking account. This is a business account registered to a financial services company." "What kind of financial services company?" "The kind that launders money for criminal operations," she said grimly. "Marcus, you weren't just funding Vanessa's lifestyle. You were funding a murder-for-hire network." The kitchen fell silent, except for the steady tick of the clock and the distant sound of traffic outside. Rebecca shifted uncomfortably on the couch, and Jake noticed she had been unusually quiet during the conversation. "Beck, you okay?" "The baby's been kicking more than usual today," she said. "I think all the stress is getting to him." "Maybe you should call Dr. Roberts," Marcus suggested, showing genuine concern for the first time in days. "I will if it gets worse, but right now I want to hear the rest of this." Jake turned back to Marcus. "What else do you remember about Vanessa's background stories?" "She mentioned an ex-husband in Dallas. Said he had left her everything when he died of a heart attack, but that his family had contested the will and she lost most of the inheritance. That's why she needed to be careful about protecting her assets this time." "This time," Detective Mitchell repeated. "As in, with you?" "Yes. She was always worried about someone taking advantage of her financially. Ironic. Considering she was planning to murder your wife for insurance money." Jake said bluntly. Marcus, do you understand that Vanessa never loved you? You were a mark, a target, a way to access money and commit murder. Marcus nodded miserably. I'm starting to understand that. Yes, she would have killed you too, Rebecca said from the couch. After she collected the insurance money, you would have had an accident just like all her other boyfriends. I know. Detective Mitchell's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She stepped outside to take it, leaving the three of them alone in the kitchen. Rebecca, Marcus said quietly, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I never wanted anyone to get hurt. I thought Vanessa was just upset about the affair, not planning to murder people. You thought a lot of things, Marcus. Most of them were convenient excuses for doing what you wanted instead of what was right. I know. Do you? Because even now, you're talking about this like it was some kind of misunderstanding instead of a deliberate choice to betray your pregnant wife. Jake watched the exchange with interest. This was the first time Rebecca had really confronted Marcus about the emotional impact of his actions, not just the criminal consequences. You chose her over me, Rebecca continued. Over us. You chose 8 months of lies and stolen money and forged insurance policies. You chose to give a stranger information about my daily routine, my vulnerabilities, my schedule. You chose to help someone plan my murder. I didn't know what she was planning. You knew something was wrong. You knew the insurance policy was fraudulent. You knew the money transfers were suspicious. You knew someone was taking pictures of me without my consent. And you chose to ignore all of it because ignoring it was more convenient than dealing with it. Marcus had no answer for that, because there was no answer that would make his choices defensible. Detective Mitchell returned from her phone call, expression grim. That was Agent Torres, she said. They've identified 3 more suspicious deaths connected to Vanessa Collins, David Chen in Atlanta, Robert Kim in Dallas, and Michael Rodriguez in Phoenix. All died within 6 months of their wives' accidents. All left substantial life insurance payouts to grieving girlfriends who disappeared shortly after collecting the money. How many people has she killed? Rebecca asked. Based on what we know so far. At least 15. But we're just getting started with the investigation. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where this had all started 3 days ago. Normal suburban neighborhood. Normal houses with normal families dealing with normal problems. Affairs, money troubles. Relationship drama that didn't usually escalate to federal murder charges. What happens now? Rebecca asked. Now we wait, Detective Mitchell said. Vanessa Collins is going to spend the rest of her life in federal prison. Marcus will probably get a plea deal in exchange for his cooperation with the investigation into her network, and you two get to figure out how to move forward. Apart, Rebecca said firmly. We're moving forward apart. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but Jake's presence in the room discouraged any attempts at emotional manipulation. I understand, Marcus said instead, but I want to be part of the baby's life. If you'll let me, we'll figure that out later, Rebecca said. Right now, I just want all of this to be over. Detective Mitchell gathered her files and prepared to leave. There will be more statements, probably a grand jury testimony. Definitely a trial if Vanessa doesn't take a plea deal, but the immediate danger is over. She's not getting out of federal custody. After she left, Jake helped Rebecca move to the bedroom for a nap while Marcus finished packing his belongings. The house felt different now, emptier but also cleaner, like a space that was finally being honest about what it contained. Jake, Rebecca said as he tucked a blanket around her. What happens if there are other people like Vanessa? Other networks, then we'll deal with them too, he said simply. But right now, focus on staying healthy and taking care of that baby. Everything else can wait. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me that if someone tries to hurt us again, you'll be there. Jake looked at his twin sister, 7 months pregnant and still dealing with the aftermath of nearly being murdered by her husband's girlfriend. Beck, I'll always be there. That's what family does. As Rebecca drifted off to sleep, Jake sat in the chair beside her bed and thought about Vanessa Collins' prediction that he would spend his life hunting people like her. Given what he had learned about the scope of their operations, it seemed like important work. Some families needed protecting, and Jake Sullivan was very good at protection. His phone buzzed with a text from Agent Torres. Collins is ready to talk about the coordinator. Can you be here tomorrow morning? Jake texted back, I'll be there. Outside, He could hear Marcus loading boxes into his car, preparing to move out of the house he had shared with Rebecca for 5 years. The marriage was over, but the baby would be born into a world where his mother was safe and his uncle was watching over both of them. It wasn't the ending any of them had planned, but it was better than the alternative Vanessa Collins had intended. Much better. 6 weeks later, Rebecca Harrison sat in the witness stand of a federal courthouse, 8.5 months pregnant and facing the woman who had tried to have her murdered. Vanessa Collins looked smaller in her orange prison jumpsuit, but her eyes still held the calculating intelligence that made her so dangerous. "Mrs. Harrison," the federal prosecutor began, "can you identify the woman who conspired to have you killed?" "Yes," Rebecca said, her voice steady despite her advanced pregnancy. "Vanessa Collins, sitting at the defendant's table. And did you ever meet Miss Collins before discovering her plot against your life? Once at my husband's office Christmas party. She was introduced as his office manager." The prosecutor walked Rebecca through the timeline of discoveries, from the broken water glass in the nursery window to Jake's recorded conversation at the diner. Throughout her testimony, Rebecca kept one hand pressed to her belly, where the baby was unusually active. "Mrs. Harrison, how has this experience affected your life?" "I've had to completely rebuild my understanding of my marriage, my safety, and my future," Rebecca said. "I can't trust that the people closest to me are who they claim to be. I can't assume that normal relationship problems won't escalate to violence. And I can't take for granted that my child will grow up in a world where his mother is alive to raise him." Vanessa's defense attorney tried to suggest that Rebecca had misunderstood innocent comments, that the insurance policy was a legitimate financial planning tool, that the surveillance photos were simply Marcus documenting happy memories. "Mrs. Harrison," the defense attorney said, "isn't it possible that you misinterpreted your husband's relationship with my client? That jealousy and pregnancy hormones led you to imagine threats that didn't exist?" Rebecca looked directly at Vanessa Collins before answering. "Your client called my brother and offered him $50,000 to kill me and make it look like suicide. She provided detailed instructions about how to stage my death to appear like a pregnant woman overwhelmed by her husband's betrayal. She admitted to killing at least 11 people in similar schemes. I didn't misinterpret anything." When it was Jake's turn to testify, he played the recording of Vanessa hiring him to commit murder. The courtroom fell silent as her voice filled the space, casually discussing murder techniques and payment schedules. "Agent Sullivan," the prosecutor said, "what was your assessment of the defendant's demeanor during this conversation? Professional? Experienced? She spoke about commissioning murder the way most people discuss hiring a contractor. This wasn't emotional or impulsive. This was business," Marcus testified next, his voice breaking as he described how Vanessa had manipulated him into providing information about Rebecca's routine and assisting with the fraudulent insurance policy. "I thought I was protecting my family's financial future," he said. "I didn't understand that I was helping someone plan to murder my wife." "But you knew the insurance application wasn't legitimate." "Yes." Vanessa said it was just a precaution, that Rebecca didn't need to know about it because she would worry unnecessarily. "And you believe that?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I believed what I wanted to believe because the alternative was admitting that I was helping someone commit a federal crime." The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Recorded conversations, documented surveillance, financial records showing systematic fraud across multiple states and victims. Agent Torres testified about the broader investigation that had revealed at least 6 similar murder schemes orchestrated by Vanessa Collins. "We believe the defendant has been operating this type of scheme for approximately 4 years," Agent Torres said. "She targets wealthy men in unhappy marriages, seduces them into relationships, manipulates them into setting up fraudulent insurance policies on their wives, then arranges for both spouses to die in apparent accidents or suicides." "How many victims total have confirmed deaths directly attributable to the defendant's 17 people across 6 states? We're investigating additional suspicious deaths that may be connected to her network." When Vanessa Collins finally took the stand in her own defense, she remained calm and composed, showing no remorse for her actions. "I never forced anyone to do anything," she said. "These men chose to betray their wives. They chose to set up the insurance policies. They chose to provide information about their spouses' routines. I simply offered them solutions to their problems." "Solutions that involve murdering their wives?" I offered them the possibility of freedom from relationships that weren't working. How they chose to interpret that offer was up to them. The prosecutor pressed her about the recorded conversation with Jake. Ms. Collins, you explicitly offered $50,000 for the murder of Rebecca Harrison. How is that not conspiracy to commit murder? I was testing Mr. Sullivan's loyalty to his sister. I wanted to see if he could be trusted with sensitive information about potential threats to Mrs. Harrison's safety. By offering to pay him to kill her, by determining whether he would report the conversation to appropriate authorities or attempt to profit from it personally. It was a desperate defense strategy that convinced no one, least of all the jury. On the third day of testimony, Rebecca went into labor during a recess. Jake rushed her to the hospital while court officials rescheduled the remainder of the trial. 8 hours later, James Marcus Harrison was born healthy and loud. With his uncle Jake's determined expression and his mother's stubborn chin, Marcus was allowed a brief supervised visit, during which he held his son for the first time and wept openly. He's beautiful, Marcus said. He looks just like you did when we were babies. He deserves better than what we've given him so far, Rebecca said. But we're going to make sure he gets it. 2 days later, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, racketeering, and murder in the first degree for 3 confirmed cases where they could prove Vanessa's direct involvement in the deaths. The judge sentenced her to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Ms. Collins, the judge said during sentencing, you have shown a complete disregard for human life and a systematic approach to murder that demonstrates you are irredeemably dangerous to society. You will spend the rest of your life in federal custody, where you can no longer harm innocent families. Vanessa Collins showed no emotion as she was led away in shackles. But as she passed the gallery where Rebecca sat holding her newborn son, she turned and spoke directly to them. This isn't over, she said quietly. The network is bigger than you know. There are others. Then we'll be ready for them, Jake replied. 3 months later, Rebecca moved back to their hometown in Pennsylvania, settling into the house next door to their mother, where Jake had converted the basement into a home office for his new job with the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force. Special Agent Jake Sullivan now spent his days hunting murder-for-hire networks and protecting families like his sisters. It turned out Vanessa Collins had been right about one thing once you understood what was out there. You couldn't just walk away. Marcus served 18 months in federal prison for his cooperation with the investigation. When he was released, he moved to California to work for a nonprofit organization that helped victims of domestic violence. He called every week to check on his son, but never pushed for more than Rebecca was willing to give. On James's first birthday, Rebecca sat on the porch swing Marcus had built 5 years earlier, watching her son take his first tentative steps across their mother's backyard while Jake spotted him from a few feet away. You know what the strangest part is, she said to her twin brother. What's that? I'm happier now than I was before any of this happened. Even with everything we went through, even knowing what's still out there, I feel safer now than I did in my marriage. Why do you think that is? Rebecca watched her son toddle toward his uncle's outstretched arms, fearless and trusting in the way children are when they know they're protected. Because now I know who my real family is, she said, and I know they'll do anything to keep us safe. Jake caught James as he stumbled, lifting him high enough to make him giggle with delight. Always, Jake said, that's what family does. As evening settled over the small Pennsylvania town where they had grown up, Rebecca reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. A marriage that had nearly killed her had led to a life that finally felt worth living. A threat that could have destroyed her family had actually revealed its true strength. Sometimes the worst things that happened to you turned out to be the first steps toward becoming who you were always meant to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Agent Torres. New case with similar patterns. Could use consultation from someone with experience. Interested, Rebecca showed the message to Jake, who was still holding James and making exaggerated faces that sent the toddler into fits of laughter. Another family in trouble, she asked. Looks like it. Young mother, suspicious husband, girlfriend with a history that doesn't check out. Rebecca considered this. Over the past year, she had spoken at 3 conferences for law enforcement agencies, sharing her experience as a victim who had survived a murder-for-hire plot. The feedback had been overwhelmingly positive. with several investigators noting that her perspective helped them understand the psychological manipulation tactics used by predators like Vanessa Collins. Do you think it would help if I talked to her, the potential victim? Jake studied his sister's face, seeing the determination that had carried her through pregnancy while dodging a murder plot and rebuilding her entire life. I think you might be the only person who could really understand what she's going through, he said. But are you ready for that, getting involved in active investigations? I've been thinking about it for months, Rebecca admitted. All these families going through what we went through, feeling isolated and confused and not knowing who to trust. Maybe my experience could help them survive it. James grabbed for Jake's phone. Apparently fascinated by the bright screen, Jake handed it over, knowing that whatever the baby did to it couldn't be worse than what had happened to phones during various military operations. What would Marcus think about you getting involved in this kind of work? Jake asked. Marcus gave up his right to have opinions about my life choices when he helped someone plan my murder, Rebecca said matter-of-factly. He's a good father to James when he visits, but he's not my partner anymore. These decisions are mine to make. And what do you think? Rebecca was quiet for a moment, watching her son explore his uncle's phone with the focused concentration that only toddlers could manage. I think Vanessa Collins was right about one thing, she said finally. There are others out there, more networks, more predators, more families in danger. And most of those families don't have a Navy SEAL twin brother to protect them. So you want to be their protection? I want to be their warning system, the person who helps them recognize the signs before it's too late? Jake nodded slowly. Agent Torres will be thrilled. She's been saying the Bureau needs more victim advocates with direct experience. Then tell her yes, we'll take the case. You didn't think I was going to do this without backup, did you? Besides, James is going to need his Uncle Jake around to teach him important life skills, like how to recognize threats and protect the people he loves. As if he understood the conversation, James looked up from the phone and reached for his mother, babbling something that might have been Mama, or might have been his interpretation of federal law enforcement. Rebecca took her son in her arms and settled back on the porch swing, the same swing where she had processed the destruction of her marriage a year ago. But now it felt like a place of strength rather than despair, a launching pad for whatever came next rather than a refuge from what had been lost. You know what I realized today? She said to Jake. What's that? Vanessa Collins thought she was destroying my life, but she actually gave me a purpose. Without her, I would still be married to a man who didn't really love me, raising a child in a house built on lies, never knowing what I was actually capable of surviving. So you're grateful to her? God, no. She's a murderer who deserves to spend the rest of her life in prison, but I'm grateful for what I learned about myself because of her. I'm stronger than I thought. We're stronger than I thought. Jake's phone buzzed with another message from Agent Torres. Case is urgent. Can you be in Denver tomorrow? Looks like we're going to Colorado, Jake said. Then we better pack light, Rebecca replied, already mentally cataloging what James would need for travel. Another family needs our help. As they headed inside to prepare for their new mission, Rebecca felt the satisfaction that came with knowing exactly who she was and what she was meant to do. She was a mother, a survivor, and now a protector of other families facing similar threats. The woman who had discovered her husband's affair through a broken water glass in a nursery window was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that real strength came not from avoiding danger, but from standing up to it when people you loved were at risk. Vanessa Collins had intended to destroy the Harrison family. Instead, she had forged them into something unbreakable. 2 years later, Rebecca Harrison Sullivan stood at the podium of the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, addressing a room full of investigators, prosecutors, and victim advocates from across the country. James, now a sturdy 2-year-old, sat in the front row with his grandmother, Margaret, quietly coloring in a book about airplanes. The most important thing to understand about murder-for-hire schemes, Rebecca said, is that they rely on the victim's trust and isolation. The perpetrators don't just plan your death, they plan your silence. In the audience, she could see agents taking notes, prosecutors preparing for trials, and victim advocates learning to recognize the signs that could save lives. Since joining the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force as a civilian consultant, Rebecca had helped identify and prosecute 12 separate murder-for-hire networks, saving an estimated 43 potential victims. Vanessa Collins succeeded in isolating me from my support systems for months before my brother intervened. Rebecca continued. She convinced my husband that I was emotionally unstable due to pregnancy hormones. She made me doubt my own perceptions about what was happening in my marriage. She created an environment where I questioned my sanity rather than her intentions. Agent Torres, now the task force director, sat in the back of the room with a satisfied expression. Rebecca's victim advocate work had revolutionized how federal law enforcement approached these cases, focusing on protection and education rather than just prosecution. The key to stopping these networks, Rebecca said, is recognizing that they follow predictable patterns, they target specific types of victims, use consistent manipulation techniques, and leave digital footprints that can be traced if you know what to look for. After her presentation, Rebecca was approached by a young woman whose story felt familiar. Suspicious husband, girlfriend with an unclear background, recent life insurance policy that the wife hadn't signed. "My name is Jennifer Martinez," the woman said. "Agent Torres told me you might be able to help." Rebecca looked at Jennifer and saw herself 2 years ago pregnant, confused, trying to make sense of a situation that defied rational explanation. "Let's talk," Rebecca said. They spent the next hour in Agent Torres's office, with Jennifer describing a pattern of behavior that matched Vanessa Collins' playbook almost exactly. Husband working late, unexplained money transfers, girlfriend asking detailed questions about Jennifer's routine. "The worst part," Jennifer said, "is that I keep thinking I'm going crazy, like maybe I'm imagining all of this because I'm jealous and paranoid." "You're not crazy," Rebecca said firmly. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. But what if I'm destroying my marriage over nothing?" Rebecca thought about Marcus, who now sent birthday cards to James and contributed to a college fund, but had never tried to reconcile their relationship. Some marriages were worth saving. Others needed to end before they became dangerous. "Jennifer, what would happen if you did nothing and you were right about the threat? I could die. And what would happen if you took precautions and you were wrong about the threat? I'd be alive but maybe divorced. Which outcome can you live with?" Jennifer's answer came immediately, "Being alive." "Then let's make sure that's what happens." 3 weeks later, Jake and Rebecca sat in another federal courthouse, watching another woman testify against another predator who had tried to destroy her family for money. Jennifer Martinez's case had unfolded exactly like Rebecca's, except this time they had intervened before anyone got hurt. 12 networks down," Jake said as they watched the defendant get led away in handcuffs. "How many more do you think are out there?" "Agent Torres thinks we've identified maybe 20% of the active operations," Rebecca replied. "Could be decades of work ahead of us." "You okay with that?" Rebecca considered the question while watching Jennifer Martinez hug her children in the hallway outside the courtroom. Another family kept intact. Another set of victims who would never have to experience what the Harrison family had survived. "Yeah," she said, "I'm okay with that." That evening, they flew back to Pennsylvania, where James was spending the week with his grandmother Margaret. Rebecca had initially worried about traveling so much for work, but their mother had pointed out that raising James in a house full of adults who were dedicated to protecting families was probably the safest childhood imaginable. "Mama." James ran across the airport terminal with the fearless confidence of a child who knew he was loved and protected. "Uncle Jake, did you catch the bad guys?" "We caught them," Rebecca said, lifting her son into her arms. "And we kept another family safe." "Ah, it's like you keep me safe." "Exactly like that." As they drove home through the Pennsylvania countryside, Rebecca reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. The broken water glass that had started everything now seemed like the first step toward a life she could never have imagined. Her phone rang as they pulled into their mother's driveway. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Marcus," she answered. "Rebecca, I just saw the news about the Martinez case. Congratulations." "Thank you. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of what you're doing. Turning what happened to us into something that helps other families. It's remarkable." Rebecca was quiet for a moment, processing the genuine admiration in her ex-husband's voice. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever think about how different things would be If you had just told me about Vanessa instead of hiding the affair. Marcus was silent for a long time. Every day, he said finally. If I had been honest with you from the beginning, if I had trusted you enough to tell you what was happening, Vanessa never would have been able to manipulate the situation. We might still be married. We might. But I also know that you're happier now than you were with me. You've found work that gives your life meaning. You have Jake as a real partner in raising James. You have a support system that would never let anyone hurt you again. Are you saying you're glad things worked out this way? I'm saying I'm glad you survived. I'm glad James has the mother he deserves, and I'm glad the work you're doing is preventing other families from going through what we went through. After hanging up, Rebecca sat in the car for a moment, watching James run around the yard while Jake and their mother supervised from the porch. Her ex-husband was right about one thing: she was happier now than she had ever been in her marriage. You coming inside? Jake called from the porch. In a minute, Rebecca replied. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to Agent Torres's contact information, then typed a message. Ready for the next case. Whatever it is, we'll handle it. The response came immediately. Good, Russ, because we just identified a network operating in 5 states simultaneously. This one's going to be complicated. Rebecca smiled and got out of the car. Complicated cases were her specialty now. As she walked toward the house where she had grown up, where her son was learning to be brave and kind under the protection of adults who would die before letting anyone hurt him, Rebecca thought about Vanessa Collins sitting in a federal prison cell. Vanessa had intended to destroy the Harrison family for money. Instead, she had created something much more powerful, a family dedicated to protecting other families from people exactly like her. The irony was perfect. Mama, look, James called out, showing her a drawing he had made of stick figures holding hands. It's us, you and me, and Uncle Jake and Grandma. It's beautiful, sweetheart. What are we doing in the picture? Keeping each other safe, James said with the matter-of-fact confidence of a child who had never known anything else. That's right, Rebecca said, lifting him up to sit on her hip as they walked toward the house. That's exactly what we do. As the sun set over the small Pennsylvania town where the Sullivan twins had learned the meaning of family loyalty, Rebecca Harrison Sullivan prepared for whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. There were more networks to identify, more families to protect, more predators to stop. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by people who loved her unconditionally and would fight anyone who tried to hurt the family they had built together. Some stories end with revenge, others end with justice, but the best stories end with love that's stronger than any threat, and purpose that grows from surviving the unthinkable. Vanessa Collins had lost more than her freedom when she tried to destroy the Harrison family. She had lost the war. If this incredible story of survival, family loyalty, and justice kept you on the edge of your seat, imagine how many other families are out there right now facing similar threats without knowing it. Rebecca Harrison Sullivan's work with the FBI has saved hundreds of lives since her own near-death experience. Stories like this remind us that heroes come in unexpected forms. Sometimes they're pregnant women who refuse to be victims. Sometimes they're twin brothers who turn the tables on killers. And sometimes they're ordinary families who become extraordinary when they're tested. If you found Rebecca and Jake's story as compelling as I did, smash that like button to help other people discover this amazing tale of survival and justice. Drop a comment below telling me what part of their story shocked you the most. Was it Vanessa's casual admission to multiple murders, or the moment she unknowingly hired her victim's Navy SEAL brother? And hey, if you want more incredible true stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got dozens of similar cases where families fought back against predators and won. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Rebecca's message: trust your instincts, protect your family, and never underestimate the power of people who truly love you. Because in a world full of Vanessa Collins types, we all need more Jake Sullivans watching our backs. Thanks for listening, and remember, family protects family. Always.